2 jobs. Yes, I can do both. I can be in 2 countries.
Good morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the local stories that make the Elm City tick. Nothing ticks better than Pundit Friday, which I usually tell you about right away, but we're going to break form. And Norma Rodriguez-Reyes has something to say before I tell you what today's program's all about.
Yeah,
Take it, Norma.
All the pundits to please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will perform your duties as governor of the state of Virginia to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I swear.
I do.
Okay.
How much do I have to reveal?
Now remember, the only way we agreed to swear you in is because you made a commitment that you did not paint yourself black with black shoe polish or ask for special favors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma.
I have not.
I can reliably say that I've not done any of those things.
But you notice Harry Jones has not come in for that.
Harry, you got something you want to tell us?
Harry and I are going to be the president of, we're going to share duties of being president of Venezuela.
You're going to be co-presidents of
A lot of vacancies at the top, but where there's not a vacancy is for chief pundits of the New Haven journalism scene. And we've assembled some of the best pundits in the media universe right here to talk about this week's news. We got pundits like the dairy-free goddess of our grassroots radio operation, the belle of our ball, managing editor of the Inner City News and host of WNH's Love Babs, Love Talk program, Babs Rolls Ivy.
What's happening?
We got the flyest news hunter-gatherer this side of Fleet Street, star New Haven independent reporter Marquisha Ricks.
What's up,
Leader of the Literati Eye. We got the Queen of Quippery, quintessence of compassion, La Voz Hispana publisher Norma Rodriguez-Reyes. We got WNHH station manager and Heavy D Donald Trump, Dave O'Tay, Harry Drost, the bravest man in New Haven. And maybe he's listening all the way in Paris.
I doubt it.
But the guy we don't, have this week, away for the second week is Joe Ugly, or is he being called now Joe Ugly?
Ugly.
We hope to have him next week back. Thanks, everyone. I know I want to start out, even though we sometimes do the stories that are below the radar, I thought that we'd do the story that absolutely everybody's been talking about nonstop all week. It's been on everyone's mind. It has completely changed New Haven in so many ways.
Oh, gosh.
You know what I'm talking about?
No. What?
The mayor delivered her State of the City address for New Haven.
I was like,
This was the big moment everyone's waiting for. The mayor comes in once a year, comes to Board of Alders in first week of February, Monday night, comes in with like an honor guard, and they got flags, and she's going to lay down.
They people get appointed to go escort the
And then
mayor
she's going to make the
in.
big statement about the moving, inspiring statement, we're going as a city, and then plus she's running for mayor in a re-election in the contested year this year, so this is going to be the statement to start the season. And Marquisha Ricks was there. And Marquisha, why have we all been talking about nothing but the speech? What blew the rafters on this?
She thanked all the folks in her administration.
All the top folks.
Yeah, she spent a long time saying
thank you.
And thank you, Becky, for being the Parks Director. Thank you, Mike Piscatelli, for being Economic
Who's the
Development
communications director?
And people should definitely thank Mike Piscatelli because he's busy.
And then she made sure to thank everybody so that nobody felt left out. So what did anyone have anything to say about this speech? What would happen? Why?
People kind of rolled out. I think the people that she thanked were really happy to be recognized.
But I mean, so what was the state of the city after you heard this?
Thankful.
Yes, thankful. She said thankful for a city that knows how to pull together in a time of crises.
Who's the communications person over
thankful for a city that cares about its people.
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
so
I hope people still care once we tackle some of these
mayor isn't
really
in
tough
blackface.
issues. Woo!
So and I think I missed the story. Norma, did you know there was a State of the City just this week?
I was there.
What did you think of the speech?
I was there.
Norma, can you get close to the mic? What do you remember
that one
most
doesn't
about
pick
the
up as
speech?
well, so.
What was the vision you got of the city, or the sense you got of what's going to be the big issues this year as we have an election?
I don't know.
Okay, as usual, folks. Harry Chose, did you?
What I can say is that definitely, in terms of the giving of the speech, the way she gave the speech, definitely wasn't revel-rousing like Governor Trump's speech.
Well, You know, I obviously am always leading to a point here, right?
Of course.
I got an analysis of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing I bumped into someone who's watching politics a long time. He had the same read I did, which was, well, this wasn't my read. He said, is she even running for re-election? I think she is. She hasn't announced yet.
She didn't say so, right?
She's saying she's gonna, everyone's assuming she's not in Hartford. I think she is. But I think what happened was that, I've watched mayors now do this for over 20 years. They always put a lot of time into saying what's going to be the big message I'm giving the city, even if it's not an election year. This is my chance to say what's going on in the city and to make a big point, in addition to thanking people, to set an agenda, to set a vision, and an election year to try to put it in my terms. Now, obviously, this was a huge fail because there was no message, no terms, no inspiration.
Oh,
but
boy.
I actually think there was a great point in the speech, and I think there was a great message, and it was a really sharp strategic idea, and it just wasn't executed. So right now we're living at a time where if you're in any public office, people just trash you for didn't get there. And sometimes because you dressed on blackface, you did something really boneheaded, you broke the law. And sometimes because people have been convinced since Ronald Reagan became president by well-funded right-wing attacks to hate government and see them as them rather than us, and any efforts to solve our problems as just helping them and not us and divide us, and to trash people who are in public service, who the vast majority spend almost all their time trying to help everybody. And even people who have complicated motives and don't always have a great day are generally really doing good work. And I think the argument there was, okay, you're going into an election year. And because if you run a city or you're a governor or senator, people are just going to trash on you all the time. But in fact, there's a lot Mayor Harp can point to that's gone well. And what's gone well is that we as a city do kind of believe in government and unity.
You should have gave the damn speech.
But here's what. I think the point of the speech, I know they worked hard on it.
Who?
I wasn't in the room, so I don't know. But actually, my advice was to not work hard in it. My voice was to just repeat what Jewish people say when they ask us to summarize what each of our holidays are about. And it just is 3 sentences. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. But they wanted to say more. Right. What they wanted to say was, let's believe in government. Let's tackle our challenges together and feel good about what we've done. And I actually think that's a strong message in 2019.
I wish she would have said that.
I wish she did say it, but she took a long time saying it.
But you can't make it a rubber chicken speech.
Succinct.
You can't make most of it not letting people know that that's your point, not driving it home. And she's so good at that when she comes on the radio. She ties what she's doing into New Haven to what's happening in Washington and Hartford. She is really smart, and she has this message in her heart. And she had an opportunity to start this election season by pointing the city in the direction she's been trying to lead it in as an antidote to where our country has been heading. And in line with what another woman in her 70s is making happen in Washington.
You need to go be her
So I'm not saying
person.
We should agree with Mayor Harp and I agree with her. I'm not saying vote for this candidate or not. I'm saying it was so interesting to me that this other person I ran into, and I'll say the name, who's watched politics so long and also doesn't really looking to root or not root for somebody, said, I was stunned as someone who watches campaigns because I could tell they wanted to do something and they just didn't do it. And I think that is an inauspicious beginning for messaging a re-election campaign.
Yeah, well, that's not going to get you elected. So there.
I spoke a lot there. What did you think?
We enjoyed what you just said.
I think you did it. Listen,
I've got my vote.
Go Tony Harp, because you made me a believer, because otherwise I was young.
No, I also think there's a critique of Tony Harp. I think anytime anyone's in office for terms, you need to have a real election. When it's been 3 terms, you need to have people who see things one way and people see things another way. And you need to have people to really tell us the good things that have happened, and you really need someone to really make the case for what could be better. That's called democracy. If you ask John DeStefano, who was mayor for 20 years, once in a while he had a real challenge. He hated every minute. He acted like a chump. And then afterwards he said, I acted like a chump. That made me much better. These things are good. Democracy works, and he came better every time.
But with Tony, it's like she really has a very good heart, and she loves the city.
And a big and a brain.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of people out there just have absolutely no mercy on you. They don't care, what you stand for. They're just very critical all the time. You have a lot
and they
of
assume the
people
worst,
out there.
and it has nothing to do with you. And I think she's kind of good at doing this for the most part. It's hard to be a person and be trashed all the time in public life.
Yeah, she's very good about not
She's
being
knowing
defensive.
that most of the people don't know her.
Yeah.
And, you have to do that now in politics. If you're going into politics, you got, and Babs, it's really different even from you and Alder, even though I know there was some of that then. You're completely demonized just for being in public, and people bring all their hate onto you, especially fired up through the internet, and make all the worst assumptions about you, no matter what you do.
That still happens.
And I think it's a problem in our public life. But, you know, I think I think also Justin Alquist, they have very positive visions of what you do in public life and why you go into it.
Have we seen him around? I saw him everywhere, and then
he was there.
Well, he was here. He was here Monday, wasn't he?
He was
yeah,
on
he's
the
here
radio.
Monday.
You know what else he's doing that's interesting?
I like to get him a spray tan, a little bit of blackface. You know, a little.
No,
I like to give him a few
Justin.
pounds. He needs a
Don't
few
do that,
pounds
Justin.
because he makes women look bad.
Well, he rides his bike so much, he's chasing
He's
So-
just
small
too
children.
skinny.
And he's running against-
He needs to gain some weight.
He's gonna be like Abraham Lincoln.
Well, he's running against Tony Harper. One thing that is a difference here, and they each have strategic strengths they bring to the table. It's 2019, and the Harp team has not learned the internet. If you go to the city's website that we just spent, if you look at the city's website that we just spent so much money fixing. If you go to the youth map, which got the most attention, tell you to do with your kids, it tells you what you could do last summer with your kids. If you go to the,
do they have anybody over there handling that? I don't think.
I think they do.
No, they don't.
And then if you go to the
I don't
section for
think-
police,
I
community
don't-
policing, 8 out of 10 districts tell you who the district manager was a year ago, but isn't anymore.
Because there's
They
nobody.
can't keep up with it though, because it changes
No, but I
so
mean-
regularly. So that, you can't like knock them on
Listen,
that.
they've
I
got
also
8 out of
remember,
10?
wasn't there like a set aside monies? I think it was 35,000, or I don't remember how much, specifically set up for the.
I think the website got
website
redone.
and-
I don't know if
and
anybody was
constantly-
specifically hired to
No,
maintain
nobody-
it.
no,
They
nobody-
Like,
rejected.
there's one thing to build a website, it's
rejected-
another thing to maintain it.
They rejected the position to run the website. They put the
Like,
money.
we still don't have an
spent,
IT person
We
for
spent
the
a lot
city,
of
do we?
money to update the website, so now it looks like
It looks nice.
it's not a year out of date and everything you can find out there. Whereas Justin Elliker was an early adopter of the internet. He was an alder until 2013 for a couple terms. He was the first local elected official who was making videos that went mini viral in town to explain what was going on with the budget and how he was going to vote. He's raising money aggressively online right now because he's going on public financing, and he's doing it pretty well, although I heard there have been some glitches and some people tried to pay. So he's not Mr. Perfect Internet, but he understood the internet, and he's a generational product of web living and web
Yeah,
connection.
he was doing the internet while the New Haven Independent was functioning out of a trash can. Wasn't that true?
Wait, what?
Compost pile.
yeah, since we didn't have offices, you know.
Yeah,
that
so
was his office.
it'll
right,
be
Paul?
interesting. Yeah, and then Tony Harp has a couple decades on him in terms of relationships she's built with people in person. So she's trying to get with the internet. She's actually very good. I don't think he has anything over her when she actually turns the camera on herself. I know you don't agree.
I don't agree.
love the videos she does, but there aren't a lot of them. It's not connecting. Like when she comes on radio, and I love that she comes on radio. You know, John Alston's the fire chief, is a real web guy. We had 2,500 people watching him from all over the world when he was on the radio. You know, so they're not web savvy. I don't think it's the only way you become mayor, but you got to be. You know, that's going to be.
I mean, it's
Gotta be with the times.
We're going that way. I mean, if you want to talk to young people, and not even young people, just
Like
like
if you just
people
want to
like me.
communicate with people there, like even I have great uncles on Facebook, and which is like what? Like you're like 79.
And Lydia's 83 and she's on Facebook.
Yeah, like,
I want to get off Facebook because the only things I like reading are Marquisha and Babs.
There's
Everything else
so
I
much
do in my life.
screaming on
okay,
Facebook.
now you can read other people.
They're boring, and it's like I feel like I lost my whole life.
Like that does. You
I don't
just
have time for
scroll
that.
by that, Paul. Scroll by.
Scroll.
But you know
Oh,
what
my.
some people are doing right now that is very healthy is they're listening to Pundit Friday on
Yay.
WNHH FM, your home for community
Lots
radio,
of people listen to
103.5
this.
FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org, or with the top pundits in the New Haven media universe. So I don't want to talk about 90% of the next subject I'm bringing up.
Uh-oh.
And that's sort of this big, really interesting new play that started in town. I saw twice this week.
Have you? I haven't gone yet. The good people,
Good Faith.
Good faith.
It's about the Ritchie versus the Stefanos
Yeah.
U.S. Supreme Court case that changed the way the country that uses racial preferences in hiring based on an anti-affirmative action lawsuit brought by people in New Haven. Changed the country. A playwright spent 4 years meeting with people on the black and white side, you know, different sides of this to really mine it and bring their words to life. And last week you pointed out, Babs, that this is for the most part a conversation white people need to have. I was telling Marquisha that according to white math, there was an integrated audience last night because
That
there
means
probably
there were,
were.
like, 20 black
There
people
were like 20 black people out of
200 white
200.
people.
So like in real math, there wasn't, but for the Yale rep, this was like
Huge.
Africa. But like
It was
Well,
Wakanda.
I'm
It
really
was
sorry I haven't seen
Yeah,
it because I'd
Wakanda.
like to see the Latino portrayal of this because the one that got really sacrificed through this whole event was a Latino.
and there is no Latino
There's no
presence
Latino
in the
present, is
movie,
it?
in the play, except the mention where the lawyer says, "Don't you leave out Ben Vargas, the one Latino guy who went with the
Yeah.
19 white fighters."
Oh, that's interesting.
And
I didn't
then
realize
went
that
and
he wasn't
testified
an
against
active,
Sotomayor.
He
He
angered.
and that cost him a promotion.
Yeah, so Ben Vargas was a firefighter who was getting the promotion of the test.
Stop
And
lying. Stop.
he went with the white firefighters, the 19, and he went to, after they won their case, he went to try to stop Sonia Sotomayor from becoming a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. This angered Norma Rodriguez Reyes, who's in our room. So she went, and she also went up there, and they went against each other.
Wow.
And so in the play, they don't have him, but they have Karen Torrey, the lawyer,
It's always leaving y'all out.
reciting his words before the Senate committee, saying,
That
"I
is
felt
really
like."
sacrificing
He said
him.
thanks, because
Big
so did
time.
Sonia Mayor was
He
an appellate.
sacrificed himself.
He was on. She was an appellate
He
judge.
didn't realize he was being used.
He's not
that
12.
It would later on cost
Well,
him
here's what he said.
promotions
Here's what he said in
and
the
his
play.
career.
So he testified when
He
they were
made himself
making.
a sacrificial lamb, and so he got sacrificed.
They were making Sotomayor.
always do that
no,
to
he
us.
believed.
No, he did that to
I think he
himself.
believed what he said. So Sotomayor is getting nominated to the Supreme Court. They're having the hearings. He says, "Don't pick her," and here's why. And they used his words.
in the play.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't have him. That Karen Torrey saying his words, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Oh, please tell me why.
So Karen Torrey, from heart, at least according to the play, is reciting his words, saying, "I share with, and I'm proud of my Puerto Rican heritage of Sonia Sotomayor. Because of her ruling in that case, I was no longer Ben Vargas, who scored well on the test and earned by merit a promotion. I became a statistic who wasn't going to be able to get ahead." This is deep. The issues in this play go deep. But then the playwright says to Karen Torrey, "Did you write those words?" She says, "You're not getting an answer on that one." So who was using whom?
I can't comment anymore because I didn't see it. I have to really see it.
No, but you can
so I
comment how you felt at the time. You felt that Ben Vargas had
Been used.
been used and had hurt the cause of the promotion of Latinos. He felt that, because one of the underlying issues of play, we don't have to go far on that, is whether you attack racism endemically. The Michael Briscoe character is a black firefighter. Really, by the end of the play, he becomes a flawed person in the first act, and Frank Ritchie is like heroic. But then by the end, all of Ritchie's flaws come to the surface, and he gets portrayed as racist. And Mike Briscoe gives the oration that is the climactic speech of the play that becomes the playwright's argument in words that are like Martin Luther King or like Humphrey Bogart. I kept thinking of this play from 1949, Knock on Any Door. We have a whole movie. Then the screenwriter's argument comes out in a passionate final speech where the person's words are made amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where she was coming from. But the argument is whether you attack. So his argument is and I agreed with his argument, is that you attack racism structurally because it was policy and structure that caused all sorts of people on a large scale to be held back and continues to. And the New Haven, including Ben Vargas, their argument is you got to look at every individual in every case and go based on no one individual losing his or her opportunity as a way to redress.
Mm.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah. It was deep. But Vargas, then Latinos in town prevented him from getting one of his promotions, though he has since, to assistant chief. So a white person became assistant chief rather than Latino in the wake of this because Latinos in New Haven were mad at him for going against Sonia Sotomayor.
Mm.
What do you think, Norm, when you look back on that?
As I look back, I think very much about what has happened to our people. And especially when we choose to become leaders, they beat us up more. Our own community beats us up more. And therefore we get seen as the Latino leader, but then our people are the ones who are beating us up more.
Well, you align yourself with white people.
And
I mean, that's what happened. He aligned himself with white folks who didn't give a damn about his Latino-ness at all.
The point that I want to make is that I as a Latina early on made a decision that I was not going to cross a line. And that line was to ever go against my people so that I would perceived and be perceived as anti-Latina.
But he
Obviously,
didn't feel
he
that
didn't
way.
care.
Yeah.
He didn't care about that. I guess he didn't do some soul searching earlier on. I'm sure now in retrospect, if he had the opportunity to go back, he would probably really rethink
Change it.
that
I disagree.
position.
I disagree.
You think so? No.
Well, I would hope he would.
Well, how about now Harry Dross, right? Now, Harry Dross, Harry Dross is also of Puerto Rican heritage. What did you think about the one Puerto Rican person of Puerto Rican heritage who was joining the 19 white firefighters and took the side against Sonia Sotomayor and said that you shouldn't be promoting people, you shouldn't throw out a test where the results, and it turned out not to be true, but where they thought the results meant that no blacks and Latinos could advance. Because one of the ironies is that black Latino firefighters are pretty much running the department because eventually that test.
Right?
Yeah. But what do you think? What do you think, Harry? Do you agree with Norma that Ben Vargas was wrong to testify against Sotomayor and wrong to ally with the 19 white firefighters throwing out that test?
Well, you just said that he was right. Yeah, you just did. You just said black firefighters are running it now because of that test, right?
After how many years?
So it turns out that he was right. That's the point. So I was against Sotomayor also, right? So
No surprise there.
well, no surprise there. And also
I'm gonna let Puerto Ricans fight this out.
No,
This ain't my fight.
I ain't fighting my fight. I'm gonna sit right here.
See, here's the thing. I don't do tribalism, right? So I don't stick
Norma
with
gonna stab
I
you.
don't stick with I don't stick with no one
No Puerto
like
Rican
that,
on Puerto Rican
right?
crime.
Norma
So
is not
I
happy.
wouldn't go. I'm not gonna criticize my people because I'm not gonna go against Hispanics. I don't do that. I'll criticize anybody.
That's true. You're
Black,
consistent.
Hispanic, white, it
You're
doesn't matter.
consistent, if
If
nothing
I
else.
feel the position is a wrong position, I will not do the tribalism thing, which Democrats do.
All right, so I
here we
wasn't
go.
saying he was right or wrong. I was saying that there were complicated factors about the specific case that in the end it didn't happen the way people said. But there was a different issue at stake, Harry, about, and it's a complicated legal thing about disparate impact versus treatment. And I was talking to one Yale law professor last night who was written about this case, and she thought one of the ironies is that it never had to get to that point. So she agrees with Briscoe and not with the 20 about how the law should work. But she said, in fact, this wasn't a test that needed to get thrown out, that it was done for political reasons, and that's what screwed everybody in the end. And one of the under themes of this is class and how how the white liberal elites align with the black seekers who are working class, but to pat them on the head and take pride in how we've helped them succeed, but that they're not really equals in their life, and that there's an equality that's forged in firehouses, that the racism never goes away. It's on the surface and it comes out at the end of the play, but also day by day you're fighting fires together and you're cooking meals together, eating together, and that's real too. So it's kind of interesting. I thought I wasn't going down there. What I want to talk about had nothing to do with race. I want to talk, my favorite part was the 3 words that are given to the character playing John DeStefano, who was the mayor at the time. He comes on for a 10-second cameo. They're talking to Victor Bolden, who was the African American Corporation Counsel. All sorts of subtleties that are going to come out in the play about his role. He had come from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He very much disagreed with the New Haven 20. He wasn't there when the case went on. And when the city was screwing it up before it got to court, it was a white corporation counsel fighting with the white firefighters and not getting along and hating each other. Bolden came, and the New Haven 20 loved the African American Corporation Counsel, who spent his career disagreeing with what they do, because they felt he completely understood their position and they could just get it done. So his job was, okay, they lost the Supreme Court. How are we going to fix it now? How are we going to make it work? Are we still going to fight them on everything about how we implement it? There was some unfairness and who got benefits after. And then he talked about what DeStefano said. So then they have DeStefano burst onto the stage. Says, let's move on. And he burst out. And I felt like that was 20 years that John DeStefano was mayor.
20 years.
Yeah, it's like he always made the decision about what's realistic about what you could do, and he was in charge. And it's like you fight like hell and you find your political
But that's
maneuvering.
really practical when you have to be reelected as much as you are as mayor in this town. Like you don't, like you have to stand for election so much. It's like, look, we gotta get past this. We can't be mired down in things.
And you don't have the luxury of doing
Yeah,
that. Because you this is a 2-year term says this. You have 1 year of raising money and running, and then 1 year of actually governing.
Yeah.
And then you start the cycle all over again. You know.
And that's about, by the way, there's something that DFA, who I usually love his tweets, I think he misrepresented what we said. He said, pundits on WNHH are mocking, there's a tweet, Harp State of the City speech for handing out, quote, participation trophies, close quote, to all her department heads as if they were snowflakes needing reinforcement or maybe as a substitute for getting a raise.
Yeah, no,
I would argue we would never use those words. We were kind of, I think we were all, tell me if you think this is fair, critical of not making the point right.
Yeah.
That reading a long list of people who deserve
all the people
raise.
she thanked are hardworking people who I definitely see at as many meetings as I'm at, and who are, you know, like I said, Mike Piscatelli has like 5 jobs.
And I love recognizing those people.
He's
I just thought,
thank that guy.
He's like James Brown of the City Hall.
My point was that a speech that sets a vision and actually wanted to make a point about the great work they do and try to convince people to be unified as a community through government, that was not an effective way to get that point across. I don't think they were snowflakes. I don't think this was substitute. She gave them a raise and took the political heat. And
she did.
And it wasn't participation trophies. My critique was strategically, I felt the point absolutely didn't get across because there wasn't a single human being in New Haven who kind of ended up understanding why there was this long, boring list of everybody.
I think for me too, since we've gone back to that, like one
thanks for
thought
that tweet, by the way.
Thank you for the tweet. The thought I had, because of course the president's State of the Union was on Tuesday, the day.
Oh yeah, I forgot
right?
about that one.
And so,
thank God.
And
right?
it's interesting to me because, you know, our mayor and our president, not my president, the president,
a president,
you know, actually for once in my mind kind of had something in common, in the sense that they had to give kind of this laundry list. One list, I think, being more accurate than the other, of things that they think they've accomplished over their tenure, right? Like, and the president's speech went 1:30. Mayor's speech went about 35, I think.
And which felt longer.
It felt pretty long, and I was like, but then you have like the rebuttal from Stacey Abrams is very short, but very substantive, right? Like,
I read so much more about the substance of her speech than Trump's.
Right,
or
and it's something that sticks with you. It's something that was relatable. Like, we all relate to healthcare challenges. Like, you know, like it was relatable. And so I think the mayor could have gotten there if she'd had, like, the last snowstorm is a relatable thing, right? Like, people not having power is a relatable thing. So, like,
she could have said, everyone here who works for government, you do a great job, stand up. 20 seconds. And then make most speech about what's happening in government. She does so well when she comes on radio. This is what people think about government. Here's how we think about New Haven. Here's what we're going to do. And here's how we're going to. Yeah. So, but anyway, you know, you were there at the State House, Markeisha Ricks. You were there for the local angle of the State of the Union, which I found very interesting, which is that there was a watch party organized in New Haven, as in other parts of the country, to watch Stacey Abrams give the rebuttal. And it was done through an organization I'd never heard of before that I guess is newish, called
Fair Fight Action.
Fair Fight
Isn't
Action.
That Stacey Abrams'
That's
new
her
thing?
organization.
That's her
to try to
organization.
undo these voter suppression laws. So when you were there, Markeisha, did you feel a grassroots rumbling? Did you feel an organizing opportunity? Did you feel something that was going to come out of the local participation in this evening that would affect New Haven politics or national politics? Or was it just kind of just fun? Some people getting together.
Well, Babs was there too.
I was there.
What'd you think?
I mean, I think yes, but not
that
in
plants
that space.
Seed, but yeah.
I think because the organization is created, yes. But that night was really just to hoop and holler and make sure we were there for her, right? Like,
because it was a historic address. Like, she's the first Black woman to deliver that address.
Yeah, so we wasn't trying to register nobody to vote up in there. None of
But
that.
did it feel like a nucleus of people? Because it wasn't a big crowd. It felt like a nucleus of people who will have an impact in maybe Tony Harp's reelection.
I think it's a nucleus of people who
law.
already have impacts in different ways. Like, they're the people that were present are from different spaces, whether education spaces, who are already like a voice in, you know, critical social justice issues. So those people are already doing that work, you know, whether or not they organize under a specific banner.
And let's not lose.
Debatable.
You know, listen, at this level, at this point, it's not going to be. We have to look to history. I think it's never large numbers of people in the beginning. It is always a handful of people that sort of can move the agenda, and then everybody buys in. So we're at the groundswell. This is new, and people are like excited, and they want something else to do outside of the organizations that they already belong to. Like we all belong to the NAACP, and the NAACP has a very definite agenda. right? But this is something else. This gives you opportunity to work on something very specific around what happens around voting and voting disenfranchisement. This is very specific, and I appreciate that. So you're not going to see a lot of people understanding that until the train starts to move out of the gate.
From Pundit Friday,
Yes.
which you're listening to on WNHH 103.5 FM, live stream at newhavenpin.org. We're running over the week's headlines,
Man, we
local
getting a
headlines,
lot in.
with the best pundits of business. So can I tell you about the thing that outraged me most this week?
Uh-oh. Did something outraged you?
Something outraged me so
I'll
much.
get a little outraged every now and again.
I got so outraged
Let's see if
about
we
this.
twinning on this.
And I hadn't thought, I knew it was bad, but then I read Colin McEnroe's column in the Hearst papers, and I was just beside myself.
Okay.
And I said, how could people not care about this? Because I agree, voter suppression is one of the big issues we have to start getting outraged and care about. Can I take 30 seconds and explain what outraged me about this?
Yes.
Please do.
And I'm really interested in what Harry thinks too.
Harry, could you
Because
get the shots?
I believe this is the kind of
Tequila.
I believe this is the kind of issue that is not about liberal versus conservative. It's not about Democrat versus Republican. And even though it has a huge impact on race, matter of fact, it matters more because of race than anything else. It also matters because of class and government. I'm really interested. And what I want to find out from this room is why nobody else is outraged. Because I'm kind of got the sense nobody else was outraged. So we have a new governor. He was ran as the anti-Trump candidate. His name is Ned Lamont. He's inherited millions and millions of dollars, and he was an equity finance hedge fund person, and his marriage, very nice woman. He lives in Greenwich, and his social circle is sort of people who run hedge funds and stuff. And in fact, the first person he hired to be chief of staff runs it. It was come from a hedge fund. Let me tell you about the guy he just hired to be the director of community development and economic development. Basically, he's going to figure out how we're going to rebuild our cities. His name is David Lehman. He comes from a firm called Goldman Sachs, who brought us the recession, right? So part of what brought us the recession was all this cheating, thievery, illegal conduct, and lying and preying on the poor that Goldman Sachs and other firms did, okay, and continue to do. He was in the room, as they say, on one of the worst things they did. I won't do a long discussion, but it's called
Read the
something.
column, though.
It's called collateralized debt obligations. Basically, they had bought all these mortgages that were no good.
Yes.
So they bought all these mortgages they were never going to collect on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tons and tons of money. And people owed them money, but they're still going after them to pay, right? Then what they're trying to do is they tell people how to invest money with them, and they give them advice to their clients. They say, hey, we know how you can make some money. This is a really good investment. Invest in all these packages of mortgages. But meanwhile, they knew they were going to be no good and they were going to collapse, right, and not be able to be paid. So then they invested their own money for it to fail. So they collected the fees from people they gave advice to. Every day people invest their money. And then they made money by having those people fail and lose all their money so they could win on the market both ways. Mm-hmm. The guy in the room, one of the people who oversaw this, doing this, was David Lehman. He got hauled before Congress to testify about this. They said, when you told people to invest on this, you said you heard the word that this was a good investment. You said we heard it from the street. But you didn't hear from the street. You guys made this all up.
Made it up.
So he said, well, we're the street.
The streets of make
Yeah,
believe.
We're the street.
Oh.
So we are the street. So the first times I read the articles, I didn't understand why everyone was talking about from the street. The news articles I read at Colin.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you cheat someone based on something you're doing secretly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said you heard from someone to make it sound like it's not you, that it's good. But it's really you just talked to yourself and you knew you were actually cheating. So
Or
now,
you're like, I'm going to tell this lie
nobody
and
went
see
to
how far it
jail.
goes.
Hustler, baby.
No one went to jail for breaking the law like this and preying on poor and middle class people and destroying their lives, and they lose their homes and jobs and their whole cities collapse and stuff. Not a single person went to jail for doing this all illegally. Now they have a whole new set of ways of doing predatory lending by coming up with ideas like this. Now they'll have your car stop in the middle of the highway if they give you a loan you can't pay. As of yesterday, and this does get to be a Trump thing, where they've dismantled the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which under Obama did collect billions of dollars and stopped companies from doing this kind of stuff. They changed the definition yesterday, so now they don't have to have any barrier to try to give people money they know they can never pay back and then possess their possessions. This guy is Ned Lamont's choice about how we're going to rebuild our cities. Why is no one outraged about this? Because it took so long to explain?
Yeah.
People don't know about
Or
it.
they don't understand it.
I mean, people were outraged about whether or not Nancy Pelosi was giving shade in her picture to Trump, whether or not Trump is spending too much time tanning. does anything compare to this?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
But not for nothing. Is Colin McEnroe the only person writing about it? Like,
yes.
Is he the only one writing?
Exactly.
Well,
So why isn't everybody else writing about it?
The first day stories said he was at Goldman Sachs and he testified that he had heard something from the street. I'm someone who follows this stuff who gets madder about predatory financing than any other issue. I didn't get it until I read Colin's article.
Yeah, his article is pretty
But in general, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, there are no watch parties about that. That's not a liberal conservative thing.
No,
that's like, can you break the
everybody
law
should
and
about
cheat somebody out of their entire livelihood on a mass scale and then buy politicians from both parties who will stop you from ever getting prosecuted?
Yep.
But I wonder, is it a sense of overwhelm for people? Because recognizing that even in the whole mortgage crisis, that the little guys are kind of the guys who went to jail. Like, the big guys got bailouts. And so people are outraged about that, but then it's kind of what they expect of
And
government.
it's not even the bailouts that bother me because we got all that money back and it saved a lot more jobs. It's the out-and-out law breaking. Now, Eric Holder, who did a good job, I know Harry doesn't agree, going after like corrupt police forces like East Havens and criminal justice, made the decision he wasn't going to go after these big guys in corporate wrongdoing. He'll just negotiate settlements with them because in the end you're going to lose because they get paid for better lawyers and it takes years. So why not just get the money from the settlements? That's a fraction of it. And obviously some of us feel, and the people who are going to support Elizabeth Warren feel, you let the biggest crooks who hurt the people the most get away. And now the Trump administration solidified
But I also
that by
think
undoing
too that
the
like
Consumer Financial
the
Protection Bureau.
people who were hurt the most are the people who have the least amount of voice anyway, right? Like they're the least people able to do anything about it, to hold anybody accountable.
See, I would agree that they are the 100% who voted for Donald
How
Trump
is
and
this-
Bernie Sanders.
But how is
I
this
think that's the
different?
Donald Trump Bernie
How is
Sanders
this
vote.
different than like old school drug dealing? It's the kids on the
It's
corners
much
that went to
different
jail,
because it's such
but
a
the
bigger
people who bring the
scale.
drugs in and
But
the
it's
people
causing
who,
so much more harm.
It's the same harm.
It's
It's the
destroying
same
communities.
people. Same harm, same people.
But they're protected
Except one
because
is
of who
exactly
they
what
are.
I'm saying.
White-collar
They're
crime, and it's
protected.
very difficult to see the everyday people that has a lot more to,
Like I
2
can
or
see
3
the drug
jobs,
dealer destroying my
all the
community.
things
I
that they
can't
have
see
to
that
do. They're
guy
not
sitting
thinking about these
on the
things.
street destroying my community, like destroying New Haven, like even by
Well,
the types of mortgage deals they've
last
done.
week I had the guy on who was wrongfully convicted on Criminal Justice Insider, and he talked about how the cases that don't get prosecuted are these white collar crime cases because they're not sexy enough and they take too long. They take a lot of time.
Well,
And a lot of people
and
caught in those have a lot of resources.
And it's hard to go into why the economy failed, so I'm not even going to go touch all of that Trump stuff. But you look at both parties. They've been complaining about Goldman Sachs forever, and Barack Obama put Goldman Sachs people there to run his finance department, right? And so did Trump, and so did so it doesn't really even matter, right? To these guys, they could complain all they want, but Goldman Sachs is in with everybody.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
that's the nail on the head right there, Harry.
And then when you think about it, right? You say predatory loans, right? But you think about what they did, and they did it to me at the time, right? They offered me a loan that I didn't have to prove any income, right? So they were offering me close to $1 million for a loan that I didn't have to prove any income. So yes, they're doing something horrible, but it was on me to say, are you crazy? I'll never be able to pay this thing back.
Okay, Harry's got a good point there, but here's what happens at that level. People who have sophisticated resources fool people. Yes, you do get blamed for being fooled, but people go out of the way to trick you with more resources. So what they do is the incentive for the person selling you that loan is to get a big fee up front for giving the loan. Then the bank who backs his loan is going to then resell that loan and mortgage to someone else. So they get paid. So it's the next group that has to really collect. And it's a game of hot potato. Everyone keeps passing it over to the next one and collecting all these fees up front based on giving Harry money he'll never get back. And then they'll take his house back. In the end, it'll be more debt. But in the end, someone's going to hold the bag, and that's when the crash happens. And so while I agree with Harry that it's our fault to try not to be fooled, it's sometimes really hard to know. Like when someone has a figurative gun to your head, you're not always thinking, or if you're desperate for, and you didn't go to business school and you didn't get trained.
No, these
in some
people
of
are
the stuff.
definitely smarter, and they're thinking of
They're-
more
or
ways
they have
to
more
kind of trap
information.
people. I think the bigger issue, to Harry's point about like, regardless of party, like everybody's in bed with each other on this type of stuff, is that like who's going to who's gonna stand up for people? I mean, I guess
Watchdog.
Who's gonna stand up for people and say like that's illegal? And if you do that,
But that's
to people,
what
we're
Elizabeth.
gonna put
That's
you in
what.
jail.
And I'm not pushing Elizabeth for president. I promise, because I don't think she necessarily can win and get people's support. She is the #1 person in America who did this. They got the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau created. It did this. Billions of dollars came in a year that was stolen from people, and they stopped so many companies from doing it. They have now just completely dismantled that. And I think Harry's right that both, even Obama, everyone brought these people in the government. I think it's because, it's just from listening to this conversation, I think it's because nobody at the grassroots level gets upset that this guy just got appointed by Lamont.
I
And
think
until
people,
we
I
can
think
do
people
that, they're all going to
understand.
do it.
I think just like the way a Stacey Abrams has made voter suppression like a focus, there has to be some group, somebody who cares enough about this
And Elizabeth
issue
Warren is not
to-
Stacey Abrams,
And no,
because you
she's
watch
not.
Stacey Abrams,
It
you
has
can relate
to be
to her.
somebody.
Well,
just
that,
like with
that
every
Miss
food
Occasion, I seen her.
Oh, yeah,
she just
she
had
might be able to do
she
it.
might be able to do it because she just had a whole hearing on this kind of
Who?
thing.
Ocasio-Cortez.
I'm sorry,
Ocasio-Cortez.
I messed up her name too.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Ocasio-Cortez.
I saw her.
You made it Italian.
We're all Italian. We're all white.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, Miss Cortez.
Okay, AOC, because it's exactly what Fox News is doing. They can't
Are they
pronounce her
calling
name,
her AOC?
so they say AOC.
No,
we're gonna
I
get
No,
her
but that's
name right.
laziness.
No,
That's
no,
sheer
we're not gonna do
laziness.
that.
I can pronounce her
Because
name.
it's not
I just
important
didn't
to
know
you.
it, so
I
if
can't
know it-
pronounce it like all together quickly. Like
No.
I have to think about
I
it
saw
to
it in
get
my
them all
mind,
right.
but I couldn't.
Exactly.
I couldn't
have
get
to
it out.
see it.
That's all right, because people mess
But
up
I
my name
don't-
too, so I understand that.
But I try
But
not
I
to
watched
do that.
the whole thing on her the other day where she was talking about this thing. She was talking. She was in a hearing, and she was having people lay out about how to defraud the government in these kinds of way, in these white collar kinds of ways. And she was
going in.
amazing.
She's a good communicator.
I mean, she was amazing. And once it was like church call and response. She's like,
He was
okay,
like,
this,
yes.
this, and then they would say, yeah. And so when you hear it laid out, you're like, oh my God.
No, I think you're right that I just
I think our
identify.
mayor should have taken some hints from her, right, on how to give out that speech that she gave on to Monday, was it? Monday.
Harry's like, no.
All right, and
But
so-
I think that's what it takes. It takes somebody, and maybe it's somebody who's affected by this issue, like who has a poignant story to tell, or who has been interacting. Like if we had an Amy Marks doing something like that, oh my gosh,
she's good at that.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Today, William Tong, our state attorney general, put out a release about how they changed the rules yesterday for the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Where no longer, when you're a payday lender, when you give that big loan up front, someone they have to pay back, how you no longer have to look out as to whether the person can pay it back.
Oh gosh.
So he talked about how the majority of people get a payday loan. Let's say it's like $300. The majority of the people end up paying more than $600.
absolutely more.
The majority of people take a second loan to try to pay back the
Yep.
first one.
I
And
ran
that's
a
what
whole
they're counting on.
I ran a whole piece on this because this is. I ran a whole.
It's legal
piece.
because they just changed the rules.
They just changed the
They had
rules.
made it illegal and they just made it legal again.
I just ran a whole thing on this in the inner city a couple of weeks back because this is a predatory problem in Black and Latino communities, right? Like this is a real problem.
And did you ever see the way that they get the local franchisees, often Black and Latino, who have really good motives, and they get these big lenders hire them, and they go advertise in places like Laveau's in the inner city, or give the speech about we're going to help empower everyone by using these financial tools that help you get some money up front and build wealth. And those are all end up being covers for way these big guys are.
Well, I mean, that was
Right.
Tavis Smiley and Cornell West when they were doing their prosperity tour, right? And they were being funded by Wells Fargo.
But not for nothing. Even some of your favorite financial gurus, like Susie Orman, like they take money from financial institutions that are trying to get you to be in debt to them, so that you will pay them more than you borrowed. From
So the
them.
most brilliant response I've ever seen came from New Haven, and it came from Neighborhood Housing Services, nonprofit builder. They did an analysis that the real problem, this has now become gospel years later, the real problem facing Black and brown communities in the country is an asset gap, much more than an income gap. That you might be earning 10% less than white people, but and this is not an exaggeration, 1/10 the assets.
Yeah.
You have
Meaning one
nobody to
paycheck,
go
you
to
lose your home.
but the payday
So the way the
loan
New Haven, what
when
they
you
do
get into
so
a
what
crisis.
they did New Haven Housing Service, when they rebuild a house, a beautiful house in New Hallville, they don't do it quick and down and dirty. They find ways to get tax credits and sometimes blood money from places like Wells Fargo. to build the house up nice so the bones are good. Then they do these, they make sure there's a new HVAC and a new boiler and a new roof so that you're not going to have to immediately in danger of losing your asset.
20 years. You got 20
30,
years.
and you're going to be able to pass
Or
down to your
30
kid.
years.
And they do homeowner training
Mm.
so that you learn how to put aside the money for the repair and all that kind of stuff. And that asset wealth, there's no, and that's the opposite from being like so indebted.
Mm.
And I think that's a great thing that they do. Like, I wish they could do more of it. I wish they had more resources to do more of it so that people could.
And they
go
get
into
pushed back
homeownership
sometimes,
that.
like from the Alder in New Hallville, because they feel like because it was led by a white person that they're coming to New Hallville and taking over. And it's not that I wish they had more. I wish that we could have more. There's a guy named Geraldo Cantor who is actually pretty good at this too in New Haven, but for other reasons he's not around anymore. He helped, and he's Latino. He helped develop how you access these nonprofit and public resources to make the finances work to do the houses well rather
But I
badly.
say more in terms of like they only have so many resources to even be able to spread that information to people. And like when you're in the crisis of say living in an apartment and all of a sudden, you know, Church Street South is getting torn down, so now you have to figure out a place to live. Like poor people make more calculations about how to do everyday life than most people who have resources do. So like the stress of that, like the stress of trying to figure out, you know, is this eviction on my file going to affect whether I can get another apartment?
And
have
actually
a place?
working
like,
class
I can't
too.
think about home ownership
And the
if
home
that
ownership,
is my issue.
And often the target is someone who has a blue-collar job. So look at some of the beautiful houses now in Winchester around the Star. These are people like they work at Yale in the dining halls or, you know, some kind of white pink collar. And they're the ones who, with that help, are gaining the assets and also strengthening the
Absolutely.
neighborhood.
And not for nothing, like if you go work somewhere, whether it's the federal government, state government, local government, or a university, those are where, if you think about it, where jobs are still kind of have some semi-sense of stability. People went to work at Winchester for 20, 30, 40 years because it was a sense of stability. You knew you were going to collect a paycheck. I think even in my own situation, I'm not a wealthy person, didn't grow up wealthy, but the fact that I had two parents who decided to give Uncle Sam their life for 20 years meant that they could purchase a house that they still own. Like that there's going to be assets left over from their life.
But you know,
but everybody doesn't have that option.
If you look at the, like in my generation, the way some of us were able to obtain homes was because at that time they had a Hill Development Corporation, they had a Fairhaven Development Corporation.
That's true.
So they had development corporations that would focus in the neighborhoods to be able to help all of the people that had a job become homeowners. They don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
See, the thing is that even though poor people are the ones who have to dig deep into their psyche on how to pay their bills and everything, they're uneducated. They don't know how to deal with their finances and everything. So there should be, just like when you have to go to driving school, that they give you a 3-hour class, or I don't know what it is, 8-hour class.
Drug and alcohol class.
There should be like an 8-hour class if you're thinking of getting a home or
absolutely
or something like that, because it's education.
But
it has to start with education.
There are places that do that, but I
Yes.
wish.
But
I
what
wish,
you're
Harry,
saying
that
is
is
that
the model
should be
here with the
mandatory.
nonprofit.
Yeah,
It
I
shouldn't
wish-
be optional.
Listen, I wish they could do it in high school. Like I wish high schools would teach
Yeah.
life skills,
There are some
like
states
real
that
life
have passed.
schools.
There are some states that have
And
passed
financial
laws that have to
literacy.
provide
The Harvard
financial literacy.
administration, although you didn't hear in the speech, they've done some of that in the
Yeah,
Digital
they
Avenue Center.
have.
You know, I actually think it's not the poorest homeowners, renters are talking here. I think it's working class.
Oh,
where
I
they own
agree.
that, and then they rent.
But
they
those
live in
working
the
class
house,
are working poor.
and they right, and then they rent the apartment, but live there, unlike the slumlords. So one thing, Livable City Initiative, the anti-blight agency, the city is trying to do piece by piece, and Marquisha covered some of that this week, was try to get more of these, beat the slumlords to the house, so that a working class person, a firefighter, they've done a good job, some of them getting them houses, or Yale's homebuyer program, someone from the community owns the house and then rents out the second and third. There's so many of those great houses in New Haven. Because some people, it doesn't make sense necessarily to buy, but you can get those rents down. And you can get the mortgage to be less than what you pay in rent. What did you find? Because weren't you watching that with the LCI board this week, Marquise?
I was watching with the LCI board this week with the LCI is acquiring, or the city is trying to acquire a Wells Fargo foreclosure that, you know, has been sitting vacant on Winthrop Avenue since it was foreclosed on, right? And so, you know, you have bigger landlords in the city who snap those up really quickly because they're cheap, right? Like it's like pocket money to them. And so the city is trying to beat, these guys to this because those guys are just going to make them rentals, and what they look like. You absolutely know what they look like because you see them everywhere.
And they take the wealth out too.
Exactly.
They get
and
6
so,
and 8 rents.
But if they can find a motivated homeowner who wants to also like is interested in having rental income, then that person is going to invest in that community, right? They're going to invest, and that stabilizes the street in their mind. I think the challenge is, of course, the deeper pockets can buy quicker, right? So like for every one house that LCI might be able to acquire, these other landlords
and it's not just
20.
It's not just deeper
20.
pockets. It's cash liquidity and process.
Yeah.
So Markeisha was at a hearing where for a few months they talk about it. Then that board says yes. Another board says yes. Another board says yes. Neil Sanjuro, who is the head of LCI, really knows this stuff because she's done this her whole life, and she's around my age, and means kind of old. And she really knows it, and she identified this pretty early on, and she said, let's speed it up. And she's had some success of trying to speed it up because the other group, first of all, they get the inside information before the house goes up. I've seen neighbors say, how did you get this one? We would have bought it. We live here. And so that's why I think
that's
this week.
They're also in the business of looking.
So
like you sitting next door, but you're not making any inquiries.
So I was listening in your story this week, Markeisha, because you were talking about how they got an inside tip this time. It got Wells Fargo. So they deal with us first before them. And then they have to hustle because the other group gets so much investing from out of town to buy these
and what more is a bank gonna want but say, oh, you got
cash up front? Yeah. Norma, you about to say something?
I was just going to comment how sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to go back to things that actually did work. The neighborhood corporations actually did work because their main focus was that they didn't want renters. They wanted homeowners because that's what stabilizes the neighborhood.
And
they would
Geraldo
help the whole
Canto,
process.
I wish he were still here because he had that vision because he had worked in city government before he did this.
Arch White
He used to
Redfield, the
train.
whole corridor
And I
here.
remember of all different races, the nonprofit builders telling me, Geraldo's the guru. He's teaching me how my agency could do it.
The corporations used to go into relationships with anyone that wanted to build in their neighborhoods so that they would have to pay the corporation in order for the corporation to be able to
So how do we get that back,
provide the
Norma? Because this is
service.
our discussion we always have. Is it grassroots that has to happen with the community organizes and demands
And
it?
then, livable cities at one time, all the homes that the city owned, the properties that the city owns, would always publish them in the papers to give an opportunity to the neighborhoods to know about this. And that's not happening anymore.
Well, I think they actually are. Like they have to go back and redo it, but I think they're doing an RFP of all the vacant properties that the city owns.
Request for proposal.
Yeah.
'Cause that used to happen every single year.
So I think they're going to go
They
back
would
to
do
that.
that.
I think, if, Livable Cities has a lot of things on its plate, but I actually think it would be the right agency to kind of coordinate if they had the resources to kind of coordinate like some kind of process that works with these banks. Because look, we have a lot of foreclosures still left in our city.
9 on Saturday are scheduled in New Haven.
Exactly. And so some neighborhoods have vacant foreclosed houses, up to 40 houses
Listen,
in a
mine is
particular
coming up in
neighborhood.
April.
Filipinos want to buy homes,
But
and they're
like,
not aware of
if
that.
somebody were to coordinate something
Mine's
that
coming in
allows
April.
These 9
your house to go
foreclosures.
up and somebody's ready to buy it in the neighborhood or who wants to live in a house, like that there would be a coordinated effort with the banks that say we get first right of refusal. Like if we can get the resources marshaled and then conversely to like what Harry said, you have to have people trained and ready to go into home ownership. I think the housing authority is doing some of that, of trying to work with people to teach them about housing, how to like manage and pay for a mortgage and how all of that stuff works. But I think job insecurity is an issue. If people can't have a guaranteed paycheck in some way, and we don't live in a society anymore where people can count on a paycheck
Unless you got a union.
Unless you got a union.
Which
and
we do at
there's
our
so
biggest
much-
employer.
Exactly. So like, there are people who don't know when their job's going to go away. Or so they're working 2 or 3 jobs that are the types of jobs where you can't manage your schedule. Like you don't have the luxury of saying, oh, well, I can only work these days because I got to go to my second jobs, which happens on these days. They're like, no, you come to work when we tell you to come to work. So like we don't live in that world anymore. And like to Harry's point, yes, like poor people have some knowledge gaps about managing their money, but let's make no mistake, people who are wealthy have middle incomes can also have gaps about how they. I'm
because
someone who had those
there are
gaps.
more wealthy people
The
filing
difference-
bankruptcy than poor
Exactly,
people.
and the difference between
And
either of those
restructuring
is
debt.
Donald
resource-
Trump.
The difference is we can't see what's happening to them until they file for
Right.
bankruptcy, or they have resources or connections to resources.
And they can restructure
where
debt in
they
ways
can
that poor
hide
people
the poor
can't.
way they handle money
Yep.
in ways that poor people can't.
Yeah. So restructuring
you-
debt is a real thing.
So
And you
I
heard
think it's
it.
a twofold problem.
And you heard it from Markeisha Ricks. Laying it down.
The benediction.
Pundit Friday.
The benediction. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
Markeisha Ricks, Babs Rolls Ivy, Norm Rodriguez Reyes, Harry Droz, and quietly sitting in but taking it all in, Polly Lauer.
Hey,
Observing
Polly.
us. Nice to have her in the
And,
studio.
And Paul Bass, thank you very much.
Bonsoir, bon voyage,
Bon
Joe
voyage.
Ugly. Safe
Yeah,
trip
oui,
back
oui.
so that next week we can have Joe Ugly back
Yes.
on Pundit
Bring us
Friday.
back macarons.
Bring me back
Something without
Parisian.
butter.
Will Joe have a beret?
Oh, please have a beret. Please.
All right, to find that out, you're
And a
gonna have
little
to tune in
mustache.
and a little mustache. You'll have to tune in next week to.
Is Joe
Pundit
ever
Friday.
coming back from Paris?
That's a good question. Maybe.
I
He
don't
might be
know.
like, I don't know. Paris is better than.
Thank you so much for joining us,
Change the
everyone.
US.
Thanks to the best pundits in the media universe. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. Now we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all weekend long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.